Xiaoqing's only regret in life is that she blindly fell in love with a worthless man. She gave up everything for him, but in exchange was run over by his conniving mistress when she was close to her delivery date. Fortunately, heaven left her away. The end of the world arrived. She resurrected in the morgue and gave birth to a little monster, turning into a half-human, half-zombie freak. Her son neither human nor monster. They have no other choice but to rely on zombies' crystal nuclei to develop their special abilities and continue living. This debt, she'll definitely repay that cheating couple. Chapter 1, Corpse Transformation. Qing, are you really pregnant with his child? Mu Lin stared at Xiaoqing in astonishment. She and Xiaoqing had grown up together. Nobody knew Xiaoqing's character as well as she did. Xiaoqing and her were abandoned when they were young. Although they were adopted into an orphanage, the majority of the people there were not as good as what people believed. On the contrary, that place was completely dark and evil. The old women there who took care of the children would often beat or scold them. Not being fed enough was also a common matter, not to mention the struggles between the children. Xiaoqing hated the people that abandoned her. As a result, she wouldn't lightly consider having a child of her own. She was scared that she would be unable to support such a precious being, a newborn. Further still, people like Xiaoqing and her. How could they love a man? Even more to love them enough that they are willing to give birth to a child for them? Xiaoqing gently caressed her bulging belly. Her eyes displayed a tenderness that would have been able to melt an iceberg. She had never anticipated that she would ever have a blood-related child of her own. Such a blessing. Every day she would pray a countless number of times for an early birth for this child. Afterward she would imagine their family of 3, all the happiness they would have. Mu Lin stirred the coffee within the glass, then filled her cup to the brim. After quite a while, in a low voice she spoke. Qing, you need to know that being in this line of work, how could one just quit whenever they want? I've done enough things for them. If they agree to let me withdraw from the organization, that would be the best and everybody will be delighted and satisfied. Besides, Xiaolin, do you really think I am the type that wouldn't prepare anything, and I would just decide to do something randomly? Xiaoqing's voice sounded slightly cold. She had once served military service before. Because of her particularly outstanding memory in addition to her 5 sense being acute and physical attributes being of top quality, she was transferred to the Special Military Brigade. However, she eventually retired due to injuries. Xiaoqing's educational background isn't regarded as high, not anything special. After her discharge from the military service, she did not change her profession. Just by chance at that time, Mu Lin, on account of being a super capable hacker, was recruited to join that organization, thus dragged Xiaoqing into it as well. Money laundering, deals with weapons and ammunition. Xiaoqing's contributions towards the organization was definitely not little. The only sole concern is that the organization doesn't want to let her go since she was such a talented subordinate. Qing, you need to be careful. Mu Lin bit her lips. I'm going back to the headquarters right now. I'll try to contact the group leader. He should be able to help you out. Thanks. Xiaoqing sincerely thanked her. Mu Lin pouted her lips, discontented. What kind of relationship do the two of us have? Why are you still saying thanks? You're acting too courteous. However, she hesitated a bit, then slipped a photograph over to Xiaoqing. Even though you are pregnant and shouldn't have your emotions be unstable, I still think you should have a look at this. Xiaoqing frowned and knitted her brows. Receiving the photo, and merely taking one glance at it, she instantly turned rigid. The person in the photograph was none other than her lover, Lin Qifan. A total of 18 photographs. But the female in each of them was the same one. Short hair, charming appearance. But the most crucial point was that she looked incredibly familiar. She had once seen this woman's photo in Lin Qifan's cell phone. But at that time Lin Qifan had said that she was only his superior at work. When they met during a dinner party for work, they had just chatted for a bit. Xiaoqing had also not thought much about it. Instead, she felt sorry that Lin Qifan, for the purpose of his project, was required to make time for these social niceties. Lin Qifan wasn't some rich second-generation heir. The university he graduated from was also not anything special. Thus, if he wanted to be successful, he had to naturally make up for it with hard work. Xiaoqing had never thought that Lin Qifan would use a shortcut. Looking at the intimacy between the two within the photo, Xiaoqing felt her heart ache. This is your superior? Mu Lin looked concerned. Qing, don't feel too bad about it. It's still better to clarify the situation before doing anything. And Qing quietly calmed herself down, stroking her belly. She still had a child. She couldn't get too emotional, or else it would potentially cause the child harm. I'm going to leave first. You take care of yourself, okay? Lin lifted up her purse, her heart feeling difficult. If Qing found a man who really loved her, even if Qing withdrew from the organization for him, Lin would feel happy that Qing had a place to return to. But now, be careful, Qing reluctantly said, and walked Lin out. After sitting down for a good while, she looked at the photographs over and over again. Her and Lin Qifan's love was straight from a fairy tale. Lin Qifan had saved her when she was injured, and afterwards, due to Lin Qifan's gentle and tender attentiveness, she was touched and fell straight into the river of love. Marriage was just a matter of time. However now, those past events seemed just like a joke. Qing continued sitting there until her mood became tranquil again. Then little by little, supporting her belly, she stood up and left. No matter what, her child was the most important. It was almost the time of birth. No matter the issue, it would have to wait until after the child was born. Qing waved her hand to catch a taxi, preparing to go to the hospital for another examination. But before the taxi has even arrived in front of her, an ear-piercing sound came from behind her. Qing wanted to dodge, however with her pregnancy, how could she have dodged the speeding vehicle coming straight at her? That split second of being hit by the car, Qing attempted to protect the child in her stomach. My child, no. That moment of falling towards the ground, Qing saw it clearly. The female driver of that car, smiling without guilt, was the exact same as the face within the photograph in her bag. Qing tenaciously glared at this woman, but she could only follow with her eyes as the woman sped off. Waves of pain started to surface from her abdomen. She opened her mouth wide. A faint sound like a mosquito's wings sounded out. Help, my child, help. The people passing by all had eyes of pity, yet no one stopped to help her. On the contrary, as if fearing they would get inconvenienced, they sped up and left the area. Qing loathed. She loathed Lin Qifan, loathed that girl, and loathed all those ruthless people who passed by without helping. Her death didn't matter to her, but her child. He hasn't even seen the world once. Her vision became more and more fuzzy. She clearly felt blood coming from between her own thighs unceasingly spill out. Unexpectedly, a drop of water fell into the rim of her eye. She then lost consciousness, a vision of red and a cry of alarm. The rain is red. I have never seen red rain before. It must be the heavens. They must be crying tears of blood for her. She slowly closed her eyes. If there was a next life, she must kill that cheating couple. At the basement of most hospitals, usually lies a morgue. Generally, the mysterious events that occur in hospitals were associated with the morgue. The reason is because that place was too sinister, and a corpse tend to have something to do with it. It is truly tragic, one corpse, two lives. Has the offender been caught yet? Who knows, take a look, even the corpse hasn't been collected by anyone. Voices gradually drifted into Qing's ears, seeming as if a wind was dispersing. She tried to open her eyes. A vision of red, Qing remembered it. She had died, right? That car crash, her child, right? Her child. Qing stiffened and extended her hand, stroking fragmented ice intending to touch her belly, when her large bulge of a stomach started to have movements of its own. Summoning up her courage, it seemed as if something in her stomach was hitting her belly. Without enough time to think things over on reasons why she hasn't died yet, her heart was filled with joy. Was that movement her child? Is it still alive? Qing tore open her clothes to only see a gray ash-colored plump belly emerge, the skin continuously wiggling. It must be the child, it must be her child. Qing wanted to cry, yet no tears came falling out. She somewhat panicked. How could I get the child out? Her child. Within that narrow space, it must be so scared right now. Qing stroked her belly as she thought. It was at that time that she then discovered her fingernails had grew long, and the color had also changed into a greenish-bluish black. One look, and you might almost think it was a sharp blade. Expressionless looking at her own fingernails, she unexpectedly reached her hand out to her stomach and lightly cut at the skin, opening up a wound. Yet no blood flowed out. Instead, a plump white hand reached out from the opening. My child. Qing was pleasantly surprised. Waiting anxiously, she watched as that tiny hand pried open the wound on her belly, and a chubby doll-like child climbed out with difficulty. That child did not look one bit, as if it was just born with the usual wrinkles. On the contrary, he had nice ivory skin, cheeks with a tint of blush, and besides his eyes resembling a black hole, he completely resembled the average child. He tilted his head. His eyes reflected Xiaoqing's sorry figure, biting her fingers. Then immediately rushed over to Xiaoqing and called out, "Mama! Baby, my baby!" Xiaoqing embraced her Xiaobaozi, completely not discovering that the big gash on her stomach has slowly healed back up. Xiaobaozi, an endearing nickname for someone's own baby, especially pointing out how cute they are. She eagerly kissed her little stuffed bun's face. The happiness she felt was that of losing something, and then regaining it, the light after the despair. She was in complete bliss. Her Xiaobaozi was also well behaved, hugging onto his mama's neck, his bottom in the middle of Xiaoqing's palm twisting about. Mama's kisses are so ticklish. After kissing Xiaobaozi and pacifying her frame of mind, she then discovered that not only has her wound healed, but all her past scars have disappeared as well. This is absolutely fishy. Could it be that she has already become a ghost? Or a corpse? This place is cold, but don't worry, darling. Mother will bring you out of this place. Xiaoqing pushed down the suspicions in her heart. Exerting all her strength, she pushed open the space she was laid down. As soon as she carried her baby out, she discovered that the place that she was laid down was a freezer for containing corpses. As expected, she has already died. But no matter the cause, she is now standing here presently breathing and carrying her precious baby in her arms. Everything she has to be grateful is entirely because of the heavens. It must be the case that God was taking pity on her, thus allowing her to return to this ice-cold world, and giving her the opportunity to take revenge. "Mama, baby is hungry." Xiaobaozi pouted his lips, miserably staring at Xiaoqing. Seeing her sad darling baby, Xiaoqing's heart immediately melted, kissing Xiaobaozi's face again. "Darling, be obedient. Just wait until we leave this place, then there will be things for you to eat." It was because she did not know the current situation with her body, and if it would even be able to produce milk. If it wasn't able to, then it will become much more inconvenient. Not knowing the current situation of her body, and if it would even be able to produce milk. If there isn't any, then it will become extremely troublesome. Leaving the morgue, Xiaoqing made another discovery. Her strength has increased by a lot, and her body seems to be a lot more graceful. These changes all came too abruptly. It would be perfect if there was a mirror right now to allow her to view her own reflection, to check whether anything else has changed. By the time Xiaoqing arrived at the ground floor, she realized that the change wasn't just limited to her. In fact, this entire world, during the time she has closed her eyes, in a split second had thoroughly transformed. The sky and earth has turned upside down. Everything is in complete confusion, and entirely different. Chapter 2: Apocalypse. When the elevator doors opened, a dried-up greenish-blue claw suddenly reached in. Long fingernails tainted with bloody flesh, holding what seemed to be incomplete remains of brains. For what reason was it incomplete? Well, that's because that thing's head had a piece of it chopped off. You could even see from the opening, brains colored black squirming within. Xiaoqing was startled. Subconsciously with her fist, she pushed the head away. Unexpectedly, the damaged head was exactly like a ripe apple. It fell to the ground with a splat. Her strength was really great. Unable to manage her own amazement, Xiaoqing continued walking down the hallway. A floor covered with filth, mincemeat, destroyed limbs, and badly damaged carcasses that looked like it was torn apart by a beast could be seen. If speaking of these things could make Xiaoqing amazed, then the other things would make her terrified. Besides the place full of corpses, there were still animated things. Each and every one of them, across their face and body, were rotten flesh. With rigid limbs, these things wandered in the hallway. Some of them wore patient garments while some wore nurse outfits. It clearly hinted that previously when they were alive they must have been the hospital's patients and staff. Could this be the apocalypse? Xiaoqing immediately recalled the blood rain she saw prior to her death. That idea of the heavens crying for her was not the case. Rather, it was the heavens' punishment to this world. Xiaoqing tightly carried the chit in her bosom, single-handedly smashed the fire hydrant. Then from within she grabbed the fire extinguisher. Holding it as if it were a hammer, she was constantly on guard against the group of monsters. "Darling, don't be afraid." Quietly comforting Xiaobaozi, Xiaoqing discovered Those zombies didn't resemble the ones similar to a biochemistry crisis. Seeing a living person, they wouldn't approach them to tear them apart. Rather, it was like they were figuring out why they were wandering around. It was as if she did not exist. Or perhaps it was as if she was one of their own. Xiao Qing felt her chest. Not sensing any throbbing or pulsing from her heart, she bitterly laughed. She is definitely not a living person. Perhaps she might even be the exact same freaks as those things. No longer caring what had happened, Xiao Qing carrying Xiao Baozi, headed outside. She wanted to see whether if it was only the hospital that was like this, or if the entire world had changed as well. Lying on Xiao Qing's shoulders, Xiao Baozi's eyes were spinning around and around in all different directions. Yet he was not the least bit scared. The mother and child soon arrived at the hospital's entrance. Just as Xiao Qing forecasted, the outside world has already been occupied by zombies. It seems like it really is the apocalypse. Darling, are you scared? Xiao Qing lightly petted Xiao Baozi's back, then immediately found that her son had been bare naked the entire time. Obedient Xiao Baozi gave Xiao Qing a kiss and childishly said, "If Mama's here, then there's nothing to be scared of." Xiao Qing's heart fluttered. Carrying Xiao Baozi, she then went and sought out a family-owned clothing store. Choosing a lot of toddler clothes, she gave it to Xiao Baozi to wear. However, there were too many things. Xiao Qing could not possibly be able to bring all this stuff. If only she had a bag, then that would have been perfect. Wishing that, suddenly the clothes in her hand vanished into thin air. Unexpected, she was alarmed and pleased. Could it be that it was just like a novel? That she has a space dimension? Xiao Qing closed her eyes, attempting to see if she could feel the existence of the so-called space dimension. And she was able to. But the only thing was that it was only 1 cubic meter. The big pile of clothes she had chosen for her Xiao Baozi had already taken up half of the space available. Although it wasn't the typical boundless space dimension, where it could cultivate different plants and vegetation, or the space dimension capable of bringing people inside, it was still able to contain some of their daily necessities. Xiao Qing was already plenty satisfied. Putting away some clothes for herself, some things to eat, and powdered milk, she then departed with Xiao Baozi. "Mama, where are we going?" Blinking his large eyes, Xiao Baozi asked. Xiao Qing had caught a glimpse of a mirror earlier. Although the woman inside had extremely pale complexions, she did not show any signs of transforming into those zombies. As long as they didn't allow anyone to come into close contact, she ought to be safe from people discovering her special features. Now feeling a bit relieved, she announced, "We are going to the capital." Being Country Z's capital, there was a big population, but most importantly, the leaders and the army was located there. Even if it was the apocalypse, there should be some sort of order there. Xiao Qing also still had a child to raise, and going to that place ought to be a little bit easier. Currently they were located at S City. Even though S City isn't that far from the capital, without airplanes and trains, and under these circumstances, it will be quite inconvenient and troublesome. Fortunately, Xiao Qing didn't have to worry about the zombies mounting a sneak attack. This made the journey a whole lot safer. However, after walking for not that long, Xiao Qing was stunned. In the beginning, she had only occasionally heard some light grumbling sounds, and did not think much of it. Until now, she discovered that the rumbling sounds were coming from the only thing in her bosom, her darling baby. "Darling, are you hungry?" Xiao Baozi immediately blushed and softly replied, "I'm not that hungry, Mama." As soon as those words were spoken, his stomach giving him no respect at all immediately growled out loud, "Sorry, darling, I have totally overlooked this." Without delay, Xiao Qing found a private house. Searching for hot water, she mixed it with the powdered milk. As soon as Xiao Baozi took a big gulp of the milk, he immediately spat everything out and rolled about on Xiao Qing's bosom. "Mama, my stomach hurts, so painful." "Darling." Anxious, her eyes turned completely red. How could this be? Xiao Baozi was in so much pain, he continuously cried. But on account of his physique problem, no tears flowed out. After he had vomited all the powdered milk out, then did he feel a bit better. Xiao Qing was exceedingly distressed. Blaming herself incessantly, she kept apologizing. Darling, it's all Mom's fault." "Mama, don't cry." Xiao Baozi consoled Xiao Qing with a kiss. It was at this time that Xiao Qing knew her baby stood out from the masses, and could not be raised like the average child. But seeing her darling starve, how could she not try to think of a plan? Xiao Qing tried to find meat for Xiao Baozi to eat. But once Xiao Baozi ate a bit, He once again continuously vomited out everything. Seeing her baby vomiting, Xiaoqing's heart twisted. If it were possible, she would be willing to sacrifice her own meat to feed her baby. What's to be done? The usual steel-blooded woman that Xiaoqing revealed to others was now currently so anxious she was about to cry. Her baby, her treasure, it's all that wretched cheating couple's fault. They caused her baby to be neither a human or a ghost. Mother will find a solution. Leaving aside her grudges, she carried Xiaobaozi. She needed to find those zombies to do some investigation. She believed that Xiaobaozi's physique ought to be somewhat similar to those zombies. Before she could go catch a few zombies, she heard a loud gunshot from outside. Narrowing her eyes, she stared out from the window and saw a car violently speeding towards the downstairs of her private home. Within the car sat several people. Right when one of them reached out their hands, they emitted a regiment of flames, causing the zombies who were chasing the car to all burn to death. Perhaps she also needs a car. Just when she was pondering this thought, someone from inside the car waved at her. Are you a survivor? Thinking for a bit, Xiaoqing responded. Yes, are you guys here to rescue us? Yes, we are here to rescue people. Parking downstairs, 5 people came out and quickly arrived on the second floor. Xiaoqing opened the door. Parking downstairs, 5 people came out and quickly arrived on the second floor. Xiaoqing opened the door. The first person who entered was a middle-aged man, with a majestic appearance, but eyes displaying indecency. He made a quick sweep around the room. When it landed on Xiaoqing's body, he was somewhat breathtaken. Are you by yourself? Yes. Xiaoqing's complexion was pale, as if she was extremely startled. What happened outside? How could this happen? You don't have to be scared. Us few are superhumans capable of protecting you. Outside of the city, there is a survivor base. Once you have arrived there, everything will be all right. As that person spoke, he silently hinted for the others to close the door on the other. One youngster with yellow-dyed hair sinisterly laughed. Boss, stop being such a hypocrite. It's the apocalypse anyways, just quickly do it. Us brothers are all waiting in line. We all haven't touched a woman in quite a while. Chapter 3, Reverse Kill. Xiaoqing silently calculated. Altogether there were a total of 5 people. With her abilities, disposing of 5 people shouldn't be a problem. The only problem was that she was currently still carrying her son. Moreover, these 5 individuals appeared to have supernatural abilities. This could be a problem. What should I do? Xiaoqing carefully pondered, while the middle-aged man who pretended to be righteous was already impatiently salivating. Xiaoqing's eyes narrowed, calculating within her heart. She then lowered her head to feign how delicate she was. My husband died early, and since then I've been all alone with no one I can rely on. As she was speaking, her gaze towards the middle-aged man showed her longing to find someone dependent to rely on. Now that it's the apocalypse, us, mother and child, both just want someone we can depend on. This middle-aged man became exalted. Although forcing someone against their will was a pretty distinctive style he enjoyed, if a gorgeous woman like this was taking the initiative to lie with him, this flavor would definitely be better. He was itching to snatch the child from Xiaoqing's bosom to hand it off to someone else, or perhaps even throw it on the sofa. Xiaoqing retreated a step. He's my only son. That man immediately grasped the situation intuitively. At once he spoke. You don't have to worry. Your son is my son. I will get my brothers to take care of him. The blonde-haired youngster on the side immediately stepped in. So, that is my nephew. Come. Let uncle hug you. Patting Xiaobaozi's back. With a tender voice yet also a chilling aura, she whispered. Darling, don't be afraid. Mommy will be back soon, real soon. Xiaobaozi cleverly allowed himself into the yellow-haired youngster's embrace, then with big blinking eyes responded. Mama, don't be worried. I'll be good. Xiaoqing allowed the middle-aged man to drag her into the room. Once the door was closed, she narrowed her eyes. Her eyes rested on the middle-aged man's throat, back of the head, solar plexus, unceasingly thinking about how she could mortally wound him with one strike. With great urgency, the middle-aged man approached Xiaoqing, immediately wanting to peel off Xiaoqing's clothes. Swatting his hands away, she coquettishly teased. What's the hurry? We have loads of time. Yes, yes. The middle-aged man's gaze had a lewd look to it. Before the apocalypse, he was simply a white-collar worker. Where could he have seen a woman as beautiful and graceful as Xiaoqing? Xiaoqing slowly placed her hands on his collar area. Her fingernails lightly scraped the middle-aged man's Adam's apple. Then, following the direction of the buttons, she slid her fingernails from his Adam's apple down to a button. When his breathing started to become increasingly urgent, Xiaoqing came up close and snug. With an enticing glance towards him, her other hand stroked his stomach. Then just when his muscles were starting to slowly relax, without any signs or warnings, Xiaoqing's 5 fingers gathered together. With an astonishing speed, she thrusted her hand into his chest while the other hand crushed his throat simultaneously. As he died, both of his eyes opened wide. He attempted to call out to his companions, but because of his crushed throat, he could barely let out a whisper. Warm blood slowly trickled down from the corner of his mouth, bringing an unpleasant fishy smell a bit similar to rust. Xiaoqing swallowed a mouthful of saliva. She hadn't discovered that her eyes, originally a deep black, has slowly fluctuated into a layer of dark red covering her pupil. Yes, the smell of fresh blood. Familiar yet not. But why is it that she had an urge to move closer, ready to bite his broken neck and drink up all his blood? Xiaoqing looked as if she was hypnotized. Slowly lowering her head, she moved closer to the corpse in her hands. But in an instant, she regained consciousness of her actions. Her complexion changed. She's a human. She's not a monster who eats human meat and drinks human blood. Can't. She can't. Xiaoqing reflexively shook off the corpse, and it landed with a thump onto the ground. As if teasing a child, the yellow-haired youngster sneered. "Boss, what's the rush? Don't throw down the lovely little widow." The others roared with laughter. One after another, they also joined the yellow-haired youngsters in teasing their boss. However, after a long period of time, the middle-aged man still had not come out. "Wow, boss. You really can last a pretty long time, huh?" The yellow-haired youngster laughed, while another youth spoke up. "Something seems wrong. It doesn't make sense that there is not even one bit of sound. I'm going to go take a look," volunteered a youth wearing a black armor. The others laughed at him. "If you see something you shouldn't see, you might not be able to resist in taking part." The black-armored guy waved his hands, walked over and pushed open the door. Immediately, he discovered the middle-aged man lying face down on the bed, motionless. But Xiaoqing's silhouette couldn't even be seen. "Boss!" The black-armored guy called out while slowly approaching the bed. Before he was able to give the middle-aged man a quick pat, he discovered the bed sheets were dyed with red. The sounds of the wind being split could be heard as an item came flying from behind him, causing him to automatically employ his supernatural ability. He was a strengthener, capable of solidifying his body and resisting assaults. However, his ability that he was so proud of wasn't able to be of much use. Xiaoqing's fingernails effortlessly inserted into the back of his head like stabbing a tofu, and crushed his skull and brains. With a plop, the youth fell to the ground with a look of remaining grievance. Outside, the others at last also became aware of something not feeling right. The remaining 3 vigilantly stood up. Within the yellow-haired youth's hand, a small fireball appeared. "Everyone be careful. Something's wrong here." 3 people. One held a gun, one puffed out his muscles, while another held Xiao Baozi close. All of them approached the room. It was at that moment, from the room a shadow came flying out. The muscle man reflexively punched out his fist, easily penetrating through the shadow that came out. But as it turns out, the thing hanging from his clenched fist was the back-armored youth's corpse. Yet suddenly, his private area suffered an attack. In the split second of sharp pain, long fingernails like a sharp blade sliced his throat, causing blood to squirt out. "Don't move. Your son is with me." Just when the yellow-haired guy was about to threaten Xiaoqing, he became aware that his hand holding Xiao Baozi was slowly being drained of his supernatural ability. It was then that he realized that Xiao Baozi had a pair of black holes for eyes. With no eye whites at all, completely pitch black. It was absolutely terrifying. That was his last thought before. Under the gaze of Xiaoqing and the last guy, the yellow-haired guy who was carrying Xiao Baozi suddenly shriveled up at a clearly visible rate and became a dried corpse. The final guy screeched out loud and fired 3 shots toward Xiao Baozi. Xiaoqing's complexion immediately changed and could not hold back her murderous intentions. Grabbing Xiao Baozi, she leaped forwards, dodging the bullet. Afterwards, raising up a large marble side table, she smashed his head until it was broken and blood flowed out. In a quick second, Xiaoqing easily settled this matter. 5 people in a blink of an eye had all become corpses. Xiaoqing sat her bottom to the ground. Her scarlet eyes appeared as if blood was about to flow out. Xiao Baozi kneaded his stomach, pointing at one of the corpses on the ground. Mama, baby is hungry. I want to eat. Chapter 4, Food Hunter. Xiao Qing's expression changed. In a flash, it became pale with no signs of blood at all. She didn't desire for her child to be a man-eating monster. At that moment she wanted to cry. Her long-awaited child had finally arrived. Yet his arrival was completely different from what she was expecting. Without any family support, she had personally scooped out her own child at the hospital. But even if her baby was completely unlike the others, Xiao Qing really desired for her baby to be happy growing up, and not turn into a monster. While Xiao Qing's train of thought was swirling around in the air, Xiao Baozi had already fixed his eyes onto the corpse's head. Unable to completely convey what he himself wanted, he merely persistently pointed at the corpse's head. Inside smells so good. Xiao Qing was unsure of what to do. But no matter what, she was a fast, unwavering individual, thus quickly cooled her head. Those worthless lives must be the heavens pitying her, allowing her to crawl out from the depths of hell to take revenge. Now the only person she cared for in the world is her baby. Why should she even care that her baby has turned into a man-eating monster? Could they even still be normal people? Xiao Qing looked at her slender black fingernail, her eyes getting colder and colder. With an overcast yet soft voice she spoke. Darling, what do you want to eat? Xiao Baozi was somewhat anxious, constantly gesturing towards the head. Inside. Inside. Xiao Qing looked at the location where Xiao Baozi pointed towards. Extending her slender fingernail, she softly inserted her finger underneath the corpse's skull until she came across a solid object. With a flash of emotion upon this discovery, she scooped out the object. Her finger drenched in blood was now holding a red crystal. Looking at it, it appeared to be only the size of her fingernail, but it was excessively glossy, very beautiful. Xiao Baozi's eyes brightened up. Mama want to eat, confirming that the thing her son wanted to eat wasn't human meat, but instead this crystal. Xiao Qing was able to let out a breath of fresh air. Even though she was fine to resolutely allow her son to hunt people for food, there was definitely a knot in her heart. Yet now to discover that what her son wanted to eat wasn't what she originally thought, her heart relaxed a bit. Scared that the brains on the crystal might upset her son's stomach, she quickly used clean water to wash it. Only after did she pass it over to Xiao Baozi. After passing the crystal to Xiao Baozi's hand, Xiao Qing then approached the other corpse in the search for other crystals. That was when she discovered not everyone had a crystal in their brains, and the crystals were not all of the same color. She reckoned that only the superhumans would have a crystal within their brain. If their supernatural ability was stronger, then the crystal would be larger. On the other hand, if their supernatural ability was weaker, then the crystal would be smaller. Different supernatural abilities would lead to different colored crystals. For example, the owner of the red crystal was the fireball user. After eating 2 lumps of crystals, Xiao Baozi was full. Acting like a spoiled child, he rested on Xiao Qing's bosom, while Xiao Qing prepared to put the remaining crystals within her space dimension as Xiao Baozi's future provisions. Yet Xiao Baozi urged Xiao Qing. Mama needs to eat too. Xiao Qing stared blankly. Could she also eat these crystals? In fact, when Xiao Baozi was eating these crystals, holding one of the crystals within her hands, she had felt a sort of absorption. She was originally not planning on making use of any of Xiao Baozi's provisions, but she had a slight premonition that if she did absorb the crystal, it would be able to upgrade her strength. The advantage of increasing her strength would allow her to have the capability to hunt even more superhumans for Xiao Baozi. Holding the cyan crystal within her palm, she closed her eyes to perceive it. Within the crystal was a faint cyan light pulsing. Very quickly, it flowed into her palm and entered her body. Xiao Qing did not discover that the dark red within her eyes had slowly receded. She only felt that her violence within her heart had lightened. Rapidly, the crystal became a pile of ashes. With a puff from the wind, the ashes then dispersed into the air. Xiao Qing clenched her fist as expected. She felt her body become more vigorous. Acting as if the corpses on the ground did not exist, Xiao Qing carried Xiao Baozi down to the ground floor. The SUV that the superhumans drove was still on the ground floor, supplying Xiao Qing and Xiao Baozi a means for transportation. After all, relying on walking to leave the city and traverse to other locations, one would be tired to death. Xiao Qing hopped into the SUV. Looking at the fuel gauge, she noticed that the fuel has already been used up quite a bit. At the back seat, there were several empty barrels arranged. It was most likely that these people were preparing to go to a gas station on their return trip to get some fuel. With regards to most people, traveling through a zombie-filled city would be a narrow escape. But to Xiaoqing, it is simply too easy. Directly taking Xiao Baozi to the gas station, she filled the car up to the brim with fuel. She even filled up the several empty buckets to the brim, then prepared to leave. But just when she was about to get in the car, she heard a tearing sound from around the corner. Lifting up her head to take a look, it turns out it was some zombies who has formed a regiment. She has never seen internal strife between zombies. Could it be that zombies also have to prey on other zombies? Sensing that something was wrong, Xiaoqing didn't get in the car. Rather, she stood on the side observing the scene in front of her. After watching for a while, it seemed that the regiment was one of the zombies among the group unceasingly killing the other zombies. On the ground, a few skulls that were ripped from the zombies could be seen. Finally, even the last few remaining zombies were also killed by that zombie. Immediately, that zombie began to dig within the skulls of the zombies he just killed. Could it be that zombies also contain crystals within their skulls? Xiaoqing's interest was piqued. She carefully approached, attempting to get closer. But the strange zombie in a blink whipped his head around, and using his blackish-green eyes glared at Xiaoqing, keeping himself alert. This zombie was evidently smarter and more calculating than the other zombies. Otherwise, how could he have discovered the objects within their brains and taken the initiative to kill the other zombies? Seeing that Xiaoqing did not approach, he still did not relax in. Rather, he sped up his search within the zombies' brains. After finding a few gray-colored crystals, he slowly retreated while continuously staring at Xiaoqing. How could Xiaoqing just let him leave like that? Just earlier, when that zombie and the others were fighting, she had already made an assessment of the strength of both sides. She immediately made her move on the account that she thought that high-quality zombies should have crystals that are quite large. Thus, the crystals from these zombies are definitely enough to feed her son an entire meal. How could she just give up on this easy prey? This is why Xiaoqing quickly made her move. Taking advantage of when that zombie was preparing to turn around and leave, she surged forward. However, this zombie was more nimble and agile than the other zombies. Right when he heard the sounds, without even looking at Xiaoqing, he started to run away, trying to find a location to eat the crystal. Xiaoqing didn't expect him to immediately run away. Distracted slightly, she turned to look at the baby in the car, then gave up on giving chase. With regret, she returned back to the car, then departed with her baby. After about 15 or so minutes, Xiaoqing felt a presence secretly observing her. With one glance to the rear-view mirror, she discovered that the strange zombie was surprisingly following the car from behind. Chapter 5: Raising a Zombie. Xiaoqing had an intuition that the zombie had the exact same idea as her. In the same way that she wanted to catch him as food, he also wanted to catch her as food. Narrowing her eyes, Xiaoqing inwardly schemed how she was going to capture this intelligent zombie. After all, she was a human. If she lost to this zombie in brains, then that really would be losing face for humans. Not urgently or slowly, they continued to travel for another 2 hours. Seeing that it was the afternoon, she decided to find a location to rest, since she was also capable of getting tired. Even if her body wasn't that tired, her psyche was already fatigued. Finding a small shop with few zombies, she quickly tidied up the place. After cleaning up, Xiaoqing carried Xiao Baozi inside. With nightfall approaching, the shallowly sleeping Xiaoqing became aware of movements near the door. Earlier, she had placed a wooden stick against the door. This was so if there was any movement she would notice right away. Appearing dead silent, after another little while, a shadow came crawling in through the window. The window was one of the locations Xiaoqing was paying extra attention to. Waiting for the shadow to gradually approach, the already awake Xiaoqing quickly stood up and instantly knocked him to the floor. Xiaoqing didn't know what would happen to her if she was bitten or scratched by the zombie, so she wouldn't dare to risk it. With speed, she grabbed onto the 2 arms of the zombie in front of her. Then with a snap, she broke his 2 arms. In the split second when the zombie attempted to raise his head to bite her, Xiaoqing stuffed a new stocking into his mouth. After 2 minutes, tied up like a fried dough twist, crisp snack food made by deep-frying plated dough, he wriggled on the ground with all his might. But no matter what, He was incapable of breaking free. Xiao Qing leaned in close to take a look. From a glance, the zombie looked like an 18-19-year-old youth. His appearance was delicate and pretty, but too bad he wasn't human. Carrying the sleeping Xiao Baozi to the corner to continue to sleep, she pondered how to deal with this strange zombie, while she prepared for the daybreak of the next day. Early the next morning, Xiao Qing crawled out and looked at the zombie huddling in the corner, shrunk into a small ball, and making a rather pitiful appearance. The first thing Xiao Qing did was absorb a piece of the gray crystals retrieved from the zombie's body. Determining that the crystal doesn't produce any harmful effects to her body, then did she decide to save some for Xiao Baozi. She also discovered that he still had the crystals killed from those zombies. The majority, however, was not on his body. Only a small portion was found. With this being the case, it seemed like she will have to stay here for a little longer to gather some crystals. Then she could take Xiao Baozi and leave this place. After all, gathering zombies to kill is comparably easier than gathering superhumans. With this thought, Xiao Qing prepared to kill the zombie, so afterwards she could go out to find some more provisions for Xiao Baozi. However, right when she approached him, he awakened and unceasingly made crying sounds, as if he was threatening Xiao Qing. Squatting down, she extended one of her hands towards the zombie's head. He really was indeed more intelligent than the other zombies. Knowing that Xiao Qing was about to kill him, his original vicious appearance changed. At the same instant of squirming backwards, he let out a faint whining sound to curry some goodwill and favor. Although his eyes were already completely ash black, it still had a faint sparkle within them. Xiao Qing's lifted hand paused for a moment, hesitating a bit. Previously, the reason she didn't immediately kill off the zombie was because she felt that this zombie gave off a similar feeling as her. She was the freak among humans while he was the freak among zombies. However, if she was to bring around a zombie, no matter where she went, it would be inconvenient. Thus, Xiao Qing decided to kill him. Yet seeing this zombie struggle to survive, Xiao Qing couldn't help but recall the time when she was bathing in her pool of blood. She had also thirsted for survival. Do you understand human speech? Xiao Qing, giving up on her previous action, reached out to touch his long, soft hair. Even if the zombie was unable to understand Xiao Qing's words, he was still able to sense her killing intent slowly disperse. Hastily, he used his head to rub against Xiao Qing's palm to demonstrate his willingness to be obedient. Xiao Qing sighed, then sat beside the zombie. Before you leave the city, follow me. We'll hunt some crystals, and you'll get a quarter of the share. Seeing the zombie's obedient appearance, Xiao Qing secretly felt better as well. Still, she took some precautions as she undid the bindings. The zombie didn't strike out against her. He simply crouched down in the corner. Xiao Qing then noticed that the 2 arms she had just broken last night were already healed. This zombie is really peculiar. Using it as a reward for being well behaved, Xiao Qing handed him a crystal. The zombie used his big black eyes to stare at Xiao Qing. After quite a long time, he then stealthily extended his hand out to take the crystal from Xiao Qing's hand, then consumed it at lightning speed. It appears that he is able to directly digest these crystals. After eating the crystal that Xiao Qing gave him, the zombie felt a little closer towards her. Such a foolish expression. In the future I'll call you Air Dai. Air Dai. Second fool. Saying that, Xiao Qing immediately laughed. Being given the name Air Dai, the zombie was able to feel that this was not a very good name. Yet he did not protest. He didn't dare protest. He even made an especially sincere look towards Xiao Qing that would cause people to feel that he was a bit adorable. Seeing that Air Dai's cheeks and clothing were filthy, Xiao Qing felt like she had to help Air Dai tidy up. Finding a massive tub, she filled it up with water. After, she started to peel off Air Dai's clothes. Air Dai stood there open and guilelessly, allowing Xiao Qing to peel him naked. Xiao Qing's gaze shifted downwards, sweeping across Air Dai's pale body, then stopped at a certain somewhere. Ah! Unexpectedly it didn't rot and fall off. The Air Dai, who shouldn't show a trace of shame or embarrassment, had a sudden weird urge to retreat. However, when he was attempting to retreat, he was thrown right into the tub by Xiao Qing. Before throwing him in, Xiao Qing teased his certain area, lightly laughing. All the hair has completely fallen off. Then seeing the confused Air Dai, Xiao Qing felt somewhat embarrassed and immediately started to give clean Air Dai. Zombies really aren't fond of water. He continuously flounced around in the water, but Xiao Qing was still able to get him squeaky clean. After washing him and changing him into a new set of clothing, if you didn't look carefully, you would not be able to recognize that Dai was a zombie. Rubbing Dai's hair that was sticking up, Xiaoqing was completely satisfied. At the beginning, she was certainly helping him due to her sympathy, but now that she thought of it a bit more, having a zombie as a companion actually wasn't that bad. At the very least, a zombie wouldn't stab her in the back. In that respect, she'd rather have a zombie as a companion than a human. Seeing one big, one small sitting on the ground using the exact same confused stare on her, Xiaoqing's heart softened. It was that feeling that all women who became mothers would have, maternal love. This slow brimming of softness, for the time being, replaced Xiaoqing's trauma. It allowed her to clearly recognize that besides revenge, there are other possible reasons for her existence. Chapter 6 Encounter. After digging out the crystals, Xiaoqing let out a relaxed breath. Dai and her were very compatible. Dai brought her to the city and had wiped out an entire regiment together. Now within a corner of Xiaoqing's space dimension, there was already a huge pile of crystals. That was their 2 days of hard work. These crystals, excluding the portion saved for Dai, was enough for Xiao Baozi to eat for an entire 2 months. Xiaoqing then began preparing to depart. Before departing, she brought Dai to the city's largest shopping mall. She was preparing to clear that place up to give Dai a place to live in afterwards. After all, it was impossible for Xiaoqing to bring along a zombie, no matter how much smarter Dai was compared to the average zombie. Within the shopping mall, there was a large traffic of people. Entering the first floor, she was able to see that the zombies wandering all around was several times more than the streets. Once entering the shopping mall, one human and one zombie began taking action. Although they had only been in contact for only a brief amount of time, Xiaoqing and Dai had already cultivated a tacit understanding of each other. Just seeing Dai's attempt to seduce a more agile group of zombies to move towards the door, Xiaoqing would stealthily prepare to mount a sneak attack, to coordinate with Dai to kill this group of zombies. Every time a few zombies are killed, Dai would enthusiastically fish out the crystals within the zombie's head and present it to Xiaoqing like a treasure. Xiaoqing would then take the crystals in Dai's brain-covered hands to wash, and only then would she put the crystals in her space dimension. Worrying that Xiao Baozi staying in the car would be inconvenient, Xiaoqing had made a back sling to carry Xiao Baozi, occasionally putting a crystal into Xiao Baozi's open mouth. When they were cleaning up the first floor, unexpectedly outside the shopping mall, a large car sound could be heard rumbling. Xiaoqing and Dai, mutually understanding each other, both immediately went into hiding. Soon they saw 3 men and 1 woman enter from outside. The woman was constantly firing one fireball after another, causing all the nearby zombies to be burnt to death. Why are there so few zombies? I totally thought that there would be more zombies in the shopping mall too. The women sighed. The tall man behind her then pointed out. You guys look at the ground. There are zombie corpses everywhere. I'm afraid that before we arrived, there were already other people who have entered. Then would there still be supplies inside? Among them the fat person impatiently called out. If there isn't, then wouldn't we have made this trip all for nothing? Let's go up and take a look first. Don't be careless, we have to take extra care, stated the final member of the group, the taciturn man. The 4-member group then took precautions and slowly advanced. The fat man on the side casually talked and walked at the same time. Ideally they will have supplies. The provisions we currently own are almost completely depleted. If we don't find any supplies here, then we'll have to fall to robbing. Click click with the tongue. If we were able to steal from another easy-loaded victim, then that would be the best. We would be able to be fed for an entire week at least. The girl coldly laughed. If you guys didn't go visit prostitutes and gamble, how could we have depleted all our supplies so soon? Okay, stop arguing. The tall man frowned. Be careful all around you, fatty. Increase your awareness and perception. Opening up my perception wastes so much of my mental strength though. The fatty mumbled this as he opened up his perception. Once expanding his perception, he abruptly screamed out. There are other people up in front. The 4 of them in an instant became alert. Arranging into their attack formation, Xiaoqing immediately understood that the fatty's superhuman ability must have something to do with his perception. It must have acted like a scan causing them to be able to discover her. Giving Dai an unperturbed glance, Xiaoqing came out. I'm sorry. I wasn't sure what kind of people came in, so I didn't dare come out. Xiaoqing knew that this wasn't the time to pretend to be delicate. After all, if she was a delicate girl, then she wouldn't have appeared in a zombie-filled shopping center. Once the four saw Xiaoqing, their gaze immediately changed. Especially seeing Xiao Baozi's head stretched out from behind her shoulder, they became increasingly alert. A single woman carrying a child, able to stay alive in a zombie-covered city, and having not even a hair damaged in the slightest. It clearly indicated that this woman's strength is not to be underestimated, so much that in comparison to all of them, she is definitely stronger. After all, which of the four would dare to venture deep within a city by themselves? Seeing that Xiaoqing was a girl, the woman within the group of four stood out to speak. Nice to meet you. We are from S City's survival base. Were you the one who killed the zombies here? Noticing that the base they mentioned should be the exact same one as the group of men she had met earlier, her thoughts quickly changed. Without showing any change of expression, she smiled. Nice to meet you too. I also don't know who killed these zombies. When I entered this place, it was already like this. The four people stared at each other, none of them fully believing Xiaoqing's words. The girl laughed a bit and proceeded. I am a rank 1 fire user. These are my companions. A rank 1 perception user, a rank 1 strength user, and a rank 1 wind user. There are classifications between superhumans? Xiaoqing blinked her eyes. Feeling curious, the women hesitated a bit. Since the apocalypse, you must have not left the city, right? Xiaoqing nodded her head. Following, the woman started to inform Xiaoqing on what happened. It turns out that after the apocalypse, a portion of the people in the world had turned into zombies, another portion turned into superhumans, and finally the remaining portion stayed as normal citizens. There was a large variety of superhumans, fantastic oddities of every description. But comparing the commonly seen, there are two groups. One group is the natural users, using elements such as metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, and ice. The second group is the body users. Some had outstanding hearing, eyesight surpassing all their other senses, increased ability to jump, fortification of their skin, and even increased strength. This group also includes the mental subcategory among them, the evolution of the brain. The other superhumans who did not fall into these categories were rather few, and all fell into the other category. Currently, a large portion of the superhumans had awakened not too long ago, due to natural users having functions comparably weaker, and not entirely useful, while body users were practical, especially strength users. Body users were comparably more popular, and had a higher status than natural users. However, as long as they were aware of it, natural users could just mainly focus on increasing their strength. Besides slowly advancing ranks, strength users, specifically, were able to slowly increase their potential to transcendental capacities. Thinking for a bit, Xiaoqing extended her hand out. I should be a speed user. As for what rank, I am not too sure. However, I awakened not too long ago, so I should be rank 1. I'm really glad to meet you guys. The woman exchanged glances with her companions, then enthusiastically shook her hands and smiled. We are super happy to have been able to come across you. Chapter 7 Discovered. Both sides had an understanding. Neither believed in the other. The woman and her companions wanted to fish out the secret in how Xiaoqing was able to survive so long by herself in the city, while Xiaoqing had taken a fancy towards their crystals. As a result, although they walked forward in an amicable, polite manner, they were in fact on high alert, especially Xiaoqing. Originally, she was considering if the others didn't make a move, she would be willing to operate in harmony in investigating this large building. After all, she didn't know these four very well, thus couldn't be confident in her winning chances. But things of the world is often against one's wishes. Right when she had just arrived in front of the stairs of the second floor, the fat man suddenly turned his head and shouted, "Wrong, there's another person." When they heard this, the wind user, the taciturn man, had emitted a blade of wind towards where the fatty was facing. Originally hiding in the shadows of a secret corner, Dai angrily let out a howl. Quickly evading the wind blade, he consequently revealed himself. Pale white skin, dark greenish-black eyes carrying a dark red pupil. In addition to the comparably more rigid body than an average person, it was clear to see that he was not a human being. Even if he was wearing a neat face, it would not be able to change the fact that he was a zombie. The four of their faces changed in an instant. They had never seen a zombie with a speed this fast. Looking carefully, there was almost no difference in comparison to a living person. The tall man's brain was the quickest to recover back to normal. When everyone's gaze was fixed on Erdai, he screamed out loud, "Watch out behind you!" However, the warning was too late. By the time the other three turned their heads, they saw the wide-eyed fatty kneel to the ground, then finally falling with a loud thud. The back of his head had a hole with brains and blood flowing out. Flinging the blood off her fingernail, she unsatisfyingly put away the white crystal. The woman at once felt her legs weaken. She isn't human. Humans were able to freely lengthen and shorten, and even have black fingernails as sharp as a blade? Carefully looking at Xiaoqing once more, they noticed that her complexion was dreadfully pale, and underneath her eyes was a faint red taint. Even the Xiao Baozi popping out from her shoulder had changed to be extremely frightening. Especially his sinister pair of eyes that he was using to stare at them. Now they have truly discovered Xiaoqing's secret in being able to survive in the city for so long. As it turns out, this elegant, beautiful woman standing in front of them is not a human being at all. "I originally didn't want to kill you." Xiaoqing smirked, and then her eyes flashed. Erdai. Once the threatening Erdai obtained the command, he immediately advanced towards the three remaining people. The weakest fatty had already been killed. Now only three remained, but none of them were weak chickens. What shouldn't have been seen has been seen. Now Xiaoqing absolutely cannot let them leave this place alive. The moment Erdai took action, she also took action. After reviving, Xiaoqing's speed, strength and defense all drastically improved. After the absorption of so many crystals, all those aspects further increased. Let alone her expertise prior was in close combat. Now the tenaciousness of her 10 sharp fingernail blades just added to her fighting strength. Now that it was the apocalypse, these superhumans were still in the middle of figuring out their powers, and weren't completely proficient with their abilities yet. Thus their fighting strength was greatly reduced. In a moment, they were covered in bruises and cuts. Yet they were completely unable to harm Erdai and Xiaoqing. "Go die!" Collapsing to the ground, the woman abruptly charged toward Xiaoqing. Within the palm of her hands a blaze of flame was gathering. The fireball grew bigger and bigger, while her forehead began to ooze out cold sweat. Xiaoqing was able to tell that she had used up all her ability to amass such a large fire that a usual rank 1 fire user wouldn't be able to control. This kind of fireball, if not careful, would easily cause their own self-destruction. It seems to be that this woman was planning on sacrificing herself to take her down. Just when Xiaoqing was preparing to retreat, the tall man seized the opportunity to release wind chains restraining her ankles, which could not be separated within a short time. While Erdai was currently being wrapped around by the taciturn man, Xiaoqing's eyes turned red, giving the woman a death glare. She quickly threw Xiao Baozi away. Waiting for that woman to come closer, she was going to break her throat. Even if they were going to die together, the woman had to die first. But Xiaoqing really did not want to die. She still had to raise Xiao Baozi. If she dies, what would happen to Xiao Baozi? He was still only a little child with a sensitive identity, and required crystals from zombies and superhumans as provision. During the apocalypse, how could he continue to survive? Yet the scenario before her eyes would not allow her to have this luck. As the woman approached, Xiaoqing's eyes turned increasingly red. Staring at the woman, her heart felt fidgety. If she had a long-distance ability, then she wouldn't have to suffer these losses. Even if she has the body fortification ability, it couldn't be said that she would still be able to survive. Yet in this world, if there are no ifs, then she can only resist it. Maybe after the woman died, there wouldn't be any explosion. Although the latter scarcely doesn't happen. When the women arrived in front of Xiaoqing, Xiaoqing had already extended her hand out and broken her throat. But when the woman's body fell onto Xiaoqing's bosom, a big explosion occurred. Flames blasted into the sky, swallowing up the shadows of the two people. Erdai went mad and hollered out loud, flinging the taciturn man to the wall. He frantically charged into the explosion of fire, the previously wooden face changing into a fierce expression. Chapter 8: Parting Ways. Yet, Erdai was not successful in throwing himself into the circle of fire, because a dark green color flashed into the sky, blocking him from entering. The blaze of flames gradually went out, exposing the dark green cocoon within. The cocoon looked as if it had used willow branches plaited to construct it, incessantly moving rhythmically, Within the flames it did not even have the slightest damage. Waiting until the fire went completely out, the formed cocoon slowly contracted, revealing to the outside Xiaoqing, who besides her complexion becoming even more pale did not have any change. Erdai was stunned. The remaining two superhumans were also stunned. The first one to snap out of it was once again the tall skinny wind user. Without hesitation, he abandoned his partner and turned around and fled. Xiaoqing reflexively turned to look at him. Green vines appeared underneath the man's feet. Flying at a rapid speed, it climbed up the man's thighs and tightly restricted him. On these vines were small thorns. Tiny thorns piercing into the flesh. It quickly released anesthesia into the restrained person. The man's pupils enlarged and his body started to relax. He forcefully tried to compel himself to release his powers. But even before his small blade landed near the small vine, a sharp fingernail had already penetrated the back of his head. From the back of his head, there was a portion that wasn't covered by the skull. Stabbing in that region, one would be able to stab straight into the soft mushy brain. When Xiaoqing had shortened her fingernail, between her two fingernails, she had already pinched the cyan crystal. The final person was the strength user. His face ash-colored, he had the general idea of his outcome. If three people were unable to capture Xiaoqing and Erdai, then him alone is definitely impossible. Presently, Xiaoqing's eyes had a red light. She faintly lowered her head, using her cold gaze to stare at the taciturn man, as his eyes rapidly dimmed, due to Erdai breaking his spine from behind. For different crystals made Xiaoqing extremely satisfied. Now that she had an even better understanding of these supernatural abilities, that was what made her especially moved. Now even if she were to infiltrate these people, she could easily pretend to be a superhuman and significantly increase her confidence. After fetching the crystals, Xiaoqing once again carried Xiao Baozi on her back. Feeling sorry, she carefully inspected Xiao Baozi's body. Thankfully Xiao Baozi was not like normal kids. Otherwise throwing him aside like that would definitely hurt him a lot. After dealing with the mess, Xiaoqing brought Erdai to the next floor. Since she had almost lost her life, Erdai was not willing to allow Xiaoqing to distance herself too far away. Even when they were wiping out the zombies, Erdai would try to keep as close to Xiaoqing as possible. Using an entire day's worth of time to tidy up the shopping center, they cleared up the interior. Throwing out all the corpses then making a quick simple sweep, Xiaoqing finally sat on the floor and called Erdai over to sit by her. Come. Well-behaved Erdai sincerely sat by Xiaoqing, opening his big crystal-clear eyes like a husky dog. From her space dimension, Xiaoqing took out a bunch of crystals and a small red bag that had no patterns at all, just two pieces of cloth simply sewn together. Placing the crystals within the bag, she tied the bag to Erdai's neck. Looking at the bag excitedly, he unceasingly used his hand to touch it. Yet afraid that his long nails might puncture the bag, that cautious and gentle appearance was extremely adorable. Erdai, I have to leave now. Afterwards you, just live your zombie life here. Don't go provoking too many zombies. They're a vicious bunch. If a flock comes to beat you up, you won't be able to handle it. Live well. Who knows? Maybe we'll meet in the future. Xiaoqing touched Erdai's head, then smiled. She had just spoken so many words to this zombie. But could he even understand? Erdai then unexpectedly widened his eyes. Facing Xiaoqing he began to loudly wail. He even tore off the red bag and placed it in Xiaoqing's hands. His expression showing that he felt completely wronged, making Xiaoqing somewhat unable to bear. Having spent the last few days together, Xiaoqing was already able to understand Erdai's intentions. He was clearly expressing that he didn't want the pile of crystals he earned, and only wanted Xiaoqing to not leave. But could Xiaoqing not leave? No matter how her body had changed, mentally wise she was still a human. Living in a place with no other people for a long time could drive even the strongest mad. Let alone she still needs to have her revenge. I'm leaving, you take care. Once again placing the small red bag around Erdai's neck, Xiaoqing headed downstairs. As she advanced forwards, Erdai, resembling a child who committed a mistake, followed her from behind. When Xiaoqing walked, Erdai walked. When Xiaoqing stopped, Erdai stopped. If she just turned her head, she would be able to see Erdai standing alone not far behind her, wanting to approach her yet not daring to. She felt a bit soft-hearted. Having no other options, she forced herself to get into the car and madly drove out the city gates. Unable to restrain her urge to turn her head, she turned around and saw Dai standing at the entrance. A frail, slim figure, his shout expressing an unspeakable sorrow. It reverberated in Xiaoqing's ears. With great difficulty she resisted returning. She stepped on the gas, and the car surged forward at lightning speed, leaving Dai to stand there by himself, touching the heavy small bag. His entire being became somber. His sounds soon died down, and resembled a whimper. After a long while, Dai quietly stepped forward beyond the gates. He turned his head to look at the city behind him. Then without even a moment's hesitation, he advanced forward. Chapter 9. Entering the base. Carrying Xiaobaozi, Xiaoqing headed off towards the survivor base. She had to find that place and understand more about the current situation. Separating herself from humans for too long and not having information circulated, this would unfavorable concerning her goals. City survivor base was about half an hour from the city occupied by zombies. Xiaoqing and Xiaobaozi facing north, intended to advance towards that direction. Could you please give me a ride? On the roadside was a flirtatious woman wearing flimsy clothing, miserably trying to hitchhike. Without even hesitating a tiny bit, Xiaoqing stepped on the accelerator and continued on her way. Hearing the women's hurried retreat, after Xiaoqing left, immediately a few sturdy guys jumped out. Seeing the direction Xiaoqing was headed towards, they began to swear. Xiaoqing understood. Since the apocalypse, there was no more law, no more morality. Superfluous sympathy would just cause your death to be sooner. Driving down, no matter who it was who called out, she would not stop. Finally, before mid-afternoon she arrived at the survivor base. To enter the base, one would have to line up and get examined. Reportedly, this was because there was an incident where people who were bitten by zombies had infiltrated the base and zombified within the base. If it wasn't for a superhuman discovering it in time and killing it immediately, half the base would have been finished. Even though that was the case, there was still a lot of people infected during that incident. Therefore, the survivor base now had extra regulations. No matter if it were people who went out in search for supplies or newly joining survivors, if they wanted to enter the survivor base, then they had to participate in the compulsory body investigation. Especially for the new members, they even had to be separated for at least a day, because a zombie infection would manifest within a day. The amount of people wanting to enter the survivor base was large. All these survivors hailed from all over the place, running here to escape. When it was finally Xiaoqing's turn, it had already been more than an hour of waiting time. The staff who was doing the registration didn't even lift his head to ask. Age, sex, any abilities. 24 years old female would rank 1. Hearing Xiaoqing's voice, the staff raised his head, looking a bit stunned. Wood element. That's pretty rare. And bringing a child. My child has supernatural abilities too, but it's only strength and perception. Xiaoqing quickly stated this. She didn't want Xiaobaozi to be asked to leave. That would drive her mad. Go inside there to test your abilities. The staff gave Xiaoqing and her child a strange look. After giving Xiaoqing a metal token, she entered and found the house had a middle-aged man inside already. Right when he saw Xiaoqing enter, he asked, "Wood element, give me a demonstration so I can see." Spreading out her hand, the seed within her palm was revealed. Urging the seed, it quickly germinated and soon became a thick, long vine. There are 2 ways for Xiaoqing to employ the wood element. One method is to use energy to simulate the plant vegetation. The plant would have formidable powers, but it would be a waste of energy. Another kind is to rely on seeds. It wastes far less energy, but wasn't as powerful. Each side had something that it loses out compared to the other. Later on, when she advanced to a higher level, she could even subdue a zombie and increase her attack power. Xiaobaozi also used his extraordinary 5 senses to disguise himself. Not bad. Taking away the token from Xiaoqing's hand, he gave a metal form of the token with a green unclear design in the middle to Xiaoxing, and one similar to a brain to Xiaobaozi. Do you see the stars underneath the metal? Once you've increased your level to rank 2, then you will be able to exchange it for a rank 2 star medal in the base. Superhumans have better benefits than regular people. If you're an extraordinary superhuman, then you'll obtain even more benefits, so work hard. I will. Xiaoqing took the medal, and then entered City's survival base. This was also one of the advantages of being a superhuman. If one day you're isolated, You don't have to be scared because superhumans wouldn't be infected by zombies. Entering the survivor base, there was a person guiding Xiaoqing forward. The residence for superhumans and regular humans were different. Ordinary humans stayed in a big tent, from a few to even more than a dozen in one. Their clothes were ragged and their bodies were yellow and scrawny. In short, most of the ordinary people looked rather pitiful. There were also some that were dressed pretty well. But those are the family members of superhumans. Before the apocalypse they might have been rich. But now that the apocalypse has arrived, they have all turned into trash. Not even being able to buy a little bit of food. Arriving at the superhuman residence, it was completely different from the one she had just seen. A simple and tidy single-story house to a two-story house by the ocean. Just simply looking the house's environment, it was already better by a whole different level. Xiaoqing's residence was located near the edge of the territory. Although the space was rather narrow, the space inside was neat and tidy with a small bed and a small kitchen.